What's up YouTube, and welcome to another draw along with me. Today's tutorial is this watercolour butterfly, where we're going to use a lot of the built-in watercolour brushes. The only thing you will need is a Procreate file that's in the description down below, which will have the texture of the paper effect that we've got in here already set up ready for you to go. So once you download that and the palette that's in the description down below, you'll have everything you need to get started. If you're new here, I post Procreate content every single week, so if you'd like some tutorials to follow along with, hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the notification bell. And if you're running out of Joel Create tutorials, there's a link in the description to my Patreon, where you can get access to even more tutorials every single month, as well as sneak peeks and extra benefits on my Discord server. And with all that said, let's get started. So if you've downloaded the Procreate canvas in the description down below, you should be able to see that if you go to your layers, we've got a paint underneath layer, which is essentially the texture that sits on the very top. We have got a extra layer in the middle, which is just a blank one to get started, and obviously your background color as well. Now we're actually going to use the reference tool now, so we can add in a guide for the butterfly lines that I've previously done. So we're going to go up to our actions, we're going to go to canvas, and then under canvas you've got the option of reference. Now if you turn that on, you'll get a little window pop up. Now this window can be dragged around your whole design, and it's just a way of leaving something on the screen all times so you can get an idea for what you want to draw. And what we're going to do is, again, if you've downloaded the image in the description down below, you'll be able to do this. So go to image and then go to import image. And that should then slide up your gallery, and you should be able to find the image that I've added in the description. And if you tap on that, we'll then get this little window now stay on our screen, so we've got something just to look up at and refer against, just so we can make sure our lines all work out nicely. So just make life a bit easier. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our empty layer, and we're going to go to our brush library, and under drawing we're going to use this gloaming brush. Now this brush is pretty cool. It kind of works a bit like a watercolour in a sense, but it's a bit more solid. And then we're going to go to our layers, we're going to tap on that layer, and we're going to use the option of drawing assist. Now we need to actually configure the drawing assist, so let's go up to our actions, turn on the drawing guide, and edit the drawing guide. And you want to select the symmetry option that's on the right hand side, and you want to tap on options and make sure it's on vertical. That will give you a line straight down the middle of your canvas, and you can change the colour if you want to. Hit done, and what that allows you to do is if you draw on one side, it draws on the other, so we can make sure our butterfly is exactly the same. I'm going to go ahead and draw in the first part to get started, which will be the body, and then we can draw the lovely wings off of there. So really you want to just go sort of somewhat higher than centre. We're going to just draw in an oval for the head, and then from this point let's go ahead and add in the body. So that sort of shape there where it tapers off towards the bottom looks pretty good. And then let's add in the smaller parts at the very top here, so we can reduce the brush size down to about say 10 or 11%, and that will give us a bit of a thinner line if you're nice and subtle with your brush pressure. So just come up and then create like a nice little flick at the end, and maybe a little dot as well. And then I would leave your brush size roughly about 10% for the lines, because then you can thicken up some of the lines that you want for the wings. Now if we take a look at the wings, either side is split into half, so we've got kind of quadrants from the whole design, but each wing is split into half. We've got this line here that separates the top half, and then we've got conjoining lines that then add on to the bottom as well. So zooming in on the top half, this is the line that we want to take a look at and how it connects to the body and then the wing sort of shape up here. So we want to create this somewhat sort of triangle shape to start with. So we need a point somewhere like roughly up here, so say here is the point that we want to try and hit, and we want to come across from here and link up to the very top of there. So I'm going to come across and then down and swoop down into the body like that, so we get this lovely big curve. And then let's take a look at this line here for this sort of quadrant. As I spoke about, we've got a line that goes all the way across and up there. So we're going to start say here in the middle of the body. We're going to come out to roughly, you know, a triangle's worth, so something say here, and then make our nice little ripples upwards. You can do it in two motions. You can come across to here, and then when you're here you can go ahead and then swoop upwards and then create some nice little wavy lines in there, and then hook around the top there like so. And that's a good little shape to get started with. You can go ahead and adjust it and fill it out even more afterwards when we start to thicken up some of the lines. But let's just take a look at the bottom shape now. We've got a conjoining point somewhat here that's going to create some nice waves and then swoop all the way around onto the body. So we're going to come somewhat down to say here, and then we're going to join up all those lines to somewhat run through that. run that into the body, or parallel to the body at least. Just fill in any gaps if you leave one. And then you should have your outline of your butterfly now ready to go for some extra details inside. So we're going to take a look at each quadrant and just fill out the extra line. So we've got another line that runs all the way across and into these wavy bits down here. So from here, we're going to go ahead and draw that line in. So we're going to create that wave line like so, and then swoop down into the curve of the line that we already drew. And then let's draw in all the rest of the lines. So we've got a nice wavy one here as well that sort of loops around back on itself and into there. And then we've got some conjoining lines off of this line onto the side. So we're going to start on the outside and link up one. We go ahead and link up this other one. Let's then link up this one here as well, and this one here too. And then we're going to start here and add in the final one down here, sort of links up onto that line there. So that's the basis of the lines. Again, we're going to go in a second and thicken out some of them, but we're going to take a look at now the top half as well. So we've got this line here that comes across from the body and up in towards sort of this point here. So we're going to just add that in. So we're going to go up here and we're going to accommodate for some of the bumps in it and then just link up there. Then we've got these conjoining lines. Now each one then has what looks like almost like a leaf shape off of the end of it, which looks pretty cool. So we just need to add in this line here, and then we've got everything we need to then add those in. So we've got one that comes off of here towards the edge, and then we've got another line that's just going to come off of the side there, and another one here. And you can see I'm just adding a little bit of sort of waviness in them, and then one little tiny line here that links up. Now that's the basis of our wings. As I've mentioned, we're going to go ahead, and if we take a look at the whole design, sort of down here in this bottom corner we add in a lot more wave and a lot more of a thicker, darker area. Likewise up in the corner as well. So that's exactly what we're going to do now, is we're just going to go ahead, and you could increase your brush size if you want to say 20%, so double the size, and then just thicken out certain areas that are a bit thicker in the reference there that I've added. And then so we're going to do that. We're going to go across the top here as well, creating that point right up in there. And then I'm going to come across like I've done and create some nice wavy thick lines, and then blend that in pressure wise into the rest of the lines that I've already drawn to end up with a nice big dark corner up here. Now don't worry, everybody's lines are going to look a little bit different. Now we've also got to add in those extra lines. Now I've added in this darker area, so we didn't end up cutting any bit of them off. So I'm going to reduce my brush size back down to 10, and then I'm going to add those lines in. Now I've thickened up the areas that I know I needed to do. So up here, we're just going to create those sort of leafy sort of shapes that just meet up on the same line. So they come across and then they link up towards this dark point. And they look really cool. Let's add those lines in. And then let's add in another one there and another one here too. So that's them now done. We can revert back to thickening up the lines. Let's change our brush size back up to 20%. Let's take a look. This middle line here that separates sort of the top half and the bottom half just needs to be a little thicker. So coming around here like that, just to give some nice definition between the two halves, top and bottom. And then this line here, as this one swoops in here, it really thickens up this area down here, creating a really nice area. Just use the pressure of your pen, try and thicken up areas that you want. And then the only thing I'll do is just add in a little bit of thicker area here on the bottom swoop there, and also a little bit extra down here, just to really thicken up that darker area down here. Make sure we've got some nice smooth lines in there. So that's looking cool. We've now got the basis of what we need in order to do our watercolour. So now you've got your shape. You can spend some time tinkering with it if you want to. You can make minor adjustments here and there. I'm going to just thicken up this top corner a little bit more. But otherwise, now you've got your shape, we can go ahead and start the watercolour process. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we can actually close the reference now that we're done with it. So you can tap on the image a couple of times and you'll get the extra pop up in the top right, and you can tap on the cross to get rid of it, and then pinch with 2 fingers to get your canvas nice and big. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer. We're going to drag that layer underneath our butterfly layer. We're going to tap on that layer and we're going to do a drawing assist. And if you check the colours in the palette, we've got a nice warm collection of colours. We've got the sort of normal tones and then a darker tone, as well as a nice highlight colour as well. I've also put black in there in case you need to revert back to it. What we're going to do is we're going to grab this orange on the top row, the middle colour of this sort of warm colours. We're going to go ahead and then on this empty layer here, we're going to switch our brush out now. And we're going to scroll all the way down to the water collection. And we're going to use the wash brush. Now my percentage is set to 20% in terms of opacity, and my brush size is currently set to about 6%. It's probably a bit small. Let's probably go to about 12. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to add in a wash. So we're going to go around the outside and keep your brush down so that you can then just give a nice wash over the inside, and then maybe a little bit extra down the bottom there. And then just fade that out if you need to with a nice soft motion, circular motion, just to get rid of some of that. And if you've got some darker patches, it doesn't really matter too much. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a look at the water collection again. And now we're going to use the wet glaze followed by the wet sponge. So the wet glaze we're going to use, the opacity is set to 100% on this one. And the brush size is currently set to about 13%, so that's pretty good. And what we're going to do is we're going to start off first of all with the red. So we're going to grab the red from our palette here in the top left of the colours. And we want to primarily sort of focus our red towards the outer edges, but each individual sort of shape in here we're going to add some colour to. So we're just going to go ahead and very lightly, because it's watercolour, we're just going to add in a little bit of red into these sections down here, mainly around this edge at the bottom, swooping around like so. Let's then add in a lovely bit of red in this shape here too, following that line, a little bit more around the top. Making sure we just add it into each sort of shape in here, but leave a little bit of white in between your sort of lines and your gaps, just so that you create that sort of watercolor effect where you don't have to fill in every single piece and make sure everything's nice and smooth. You can leave a nice little white slither of the original canvas underneath. Plus we've got a couple of colors to get through as well. So let's now revert it to the orange. And then let's try and focus the orange towards the middle of the wings, and then the yellow will be closer to the body. So in the orange areas, you can reduce the brush size if you want, have a tinker depending on how big your wings are. I'm going to add in some orange in these areas here. So I'm now going to start to work on sort of individual shapes within the wings. So adding in that orange on there, a little bit more orange in here too, and a little bit more orange there. And at this point we're adding in some really sort of light tones, really. And then let's go down here before we add in the wet sponge, which will be a lot more punchy than this one here that we're using. This is kind of almost like setting a foundation colour. Let's come around in this bit here, adding in a bit of orange. And then let go, add in a bit more orange in here. Try and blend those colours together if you want. Just add in a little bit of colour very lightly, and then build up those tones. Like so. And because we're drawing assisted, everything we're doing on one side is reflected on the other, which is nice. Add a bit more orange in there, and maybe a little bit more in the center. And then I'm going to switch out to the yellow in the top row of colors. And I'm going to add in that yellow closer to the body here. So start off with a bit of yellow down in this area here and just fade that up and out. And you might at this point have to be a little bit stronger with your yellow, just to really bring it out, because we may have gone a bit darker with the other colours. So just adding in that yellow in these areas down here. Add it into these bits of the wings here too. And if you add some darker patches, it's not a big deal. Don't worry about it too much. And then each shape just needs to taking a look at and see if we can add some orange or yellow in there, just to really punch that out. But by doing it shape by shape, you can create like nice little blocks of colour. And coming down here like so, we've got a nice sort of foundation to start building up the colour with. So now we've done that, let's go ahead and switch out to our next set of brushes, which is the wet sponge. So let's select that. Now the opacity is set to 55% because this is a brush that can add a lot of colour very quickly. And now I'm going to use the darker colours. So we've got these darker tones underneath. So I'm going to switch out to the dark yellow to start with. And then taking a look at the body, I'm going to start adding in some golder tones in here. And at this point we're going to get a bit braver with the colour, how much we use it. And also don't be afraid if you just go slightly out the lines, it's not a big deal. But just adding in some extra gold in here. Let's add in some here. And don't worry if you're starting to look at your design and go, it's a bit more yellow. We've got the oranges and the red tones to start bringing in as well. So let's just add in some colour into these areas here, because we're going to overlap it shortly. And then let's switch out to the orange, so the dark orange even, the bottom one out the two, and then emphasize your orange areas a bit more, so you can start to punch those out if you want to, go backwards and forwards on your colours. Be a bit brave in certain areas to really flush out the orange areas. You don't have to fill in every bit of orange either if you don't want to, you can leave some. So it's nice and light, add in those lighter tones. And then adding in the dark red now, we can really emphasize the outer edges. So I really want to go up and around these darker edges up here. And you can see this is where I feel it starts to really come to life, because we're starting to fill out the real warm tones. So adding in some red up here. And then bringing that red in from the edge of the design and bringing it in to meet the oranges and the yellows that we've been using up until this point, and then overlapping some of them with some nice dark tones. So just be brave within the shapes of the wings if you want to adding in some extra colour. And you can see in comparison top to bottom the difference that this now makes. It's bringing in these colours from the edge down here and just sort of blending them up and in. Adding some nice bold bits of red in there. Add in some red. A little bit around the bottom edge here. Let's adding that in. Add some colour into here, I think. Like so. That looks pretty nice. And then the one thing I also want to do is go ahead and add in some bleed from the dark lines. Now, because we've separated our lines, our watercolour brushes aren't affecting the lines of our butterfly, but I want to add that in to create that sort of more watercolour effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our colours and we're going to switch out to the black now, and then primarily just down in this corner or maybe a little bit up at the top, in a circular motion just round the edges, we just want to add in a little bit of water bleed. So it's just where this water of the black would start to sort of blend into the colours, and just right around that bottom edge only, pushing that up towards the centre. Maybe you could add a little bit off of the body if you wanted to, just on either side. It will add that in, obviously. Something like that, just where the water would have bled those lines. And potentially you could add a little bit up in this corner here as well. And that will start to feed that colour into the rest of the design. Another fun part is to add in all the different splatters. So we're going to go ahead and create one new layer. I'm going to drag it underneath our watercolour design. Now, if you haven't been too solid with your colours and you've got some nice gap, and when we add these splatters in here now, you'll really start to see them sort of come through, and it will sort of round off that watercolour effect. Now, just like me, if your design is slightly too low, just grab both the layers that you've drawn on so far and then grab your cursor and then turn on snapping if it's not already turned on, and just drag that up until your butterfly somewhat sits a little bit closer towards the middle, but making sure you hit that orange line down the middle vertically to make sure you've not nudged it either side, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. Now we're going to add in some splatters, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to change our colour out first of all to the yellow on the top row. We're going to go to our empty layer that we just drew on. It's not drawing assisted, so we can vary up the colours. And now we can have some fun with these different splatters. So we've got a few at the bottom here. So we're going to use the Mad Splash even, and then just add in some orange and yellow tones around the outside first. So do the yellow, and then just adding that in where the yellow somewhat sort of sits, as if it's like spluttering outwards. Now, as a quick example, if I just change my brush to black and I add in a dot, you'll start to see that it actually comes through the design. So you can see here we've got a little splatter here, and that will start to really emphasize that realism of the effect when we get to the darker colors. So I'm going to switch back to yellow. I'm going to add some yellow right around the edge here, and I'm trying not to group them together too much, because you'd rather just do it sparingly to start with, and then when we switch out to orange and then red, you can start to fill out certain areas where you've maybe left a few gaps. And be brave and put some colors slightly outwards if you want to, so something like that, and then maybe a couple up here as well. And then let's go ahead and switch it out to the red, and my opacity for these, by the way, is set to 27%. I'm going to just vary the brush sizes as well, just so I can get some small splatters of red and make it again look a bit more realistic, with the splatters all being different sizes, and just very randomly sort of placing it around the edge, which is kind of why I'm moving through it a little bit quicker, because all of our designs at this point should look slightly different. Now if you want to, you can also put some splatters in the inside of the wings as well, because you're on a separate layer, it's not going to affect it, so don't worry about that, but you'll start to see some of those come through in your gaps. And then we can go ahead and add in some black splatters as well, so some maybe down here, and vary the brush opacity if you want to. This one's now up to 40% so that the black ones are a bit more prominent, and I'm just adding those around the edge, just a few in different gaps. And then change your brush out as well, pick the water flicks, and again my brush opacity set to about 24% to start with, and just get some varying different styles in here now. And let's just add some in towards the body, maybe a couple down here, and a couple of that have really made their way away from the design. I'm going to be brave and put some inside the design as well, just so we get some of those nice little bits popping through. And I'm actually going to change my colour out to yellow, increase my brush size, and just add in some bigger splats somewhere up and around here, just to vary up the sizes a little bit more. And then the fun part at the very end is just to add in the water line. So change your colour maybe back out to black to start with, change your brush to the water drip, and this one here, my brush size is set quite large, so about 71%, and my opacity is about 50. So here for example, you've got this black area, you can tap a couple of times and create some nice water drips from there. You can reduce the brush size and vary them if you want to. Just tap a couple of times just to get some solid colour, and then you're just going to have to vary them up in certain areas. And then by all means use some colour as well, so grab some yellow, do some yellow sort of dripping lines. Let's then add in a couple here as well, and then switch it out to the orange. You don't want to add too many, but just enough of there's a bit of a variation between all your colours, and by all means move them down so they go right to the edge of the canvas. And then let's switch it out to red to add in a final few. I'm going to make this one fairly large, and then maybe one here as well, just to add in some red. Now there is some finer details that we could add in here. We could go ahead and go right to the very top of our layers now, above the black layer, so just below our paint underneath layer. Create a new one, and then change your colour out to this light tone here that I've put in the palette. We're going to go up to our brush library, and we're going to use the water bleed at the very top. Now the opacity, I would probably reduce it to about 70%. The brush size is set to, let's go for about 10. Just want to maybe add in some brighter details, so maybe just a little bit of colour on the top of the body of the butterfly, and then maybe some sort of rounded bits in here just to create some sort of rounded sort of body shapes in here. Maybe a little bit running down the very back of the butterfly, something like that. Now we're going to go up to our layers, and on that layer we've been working on, let's tap on it and use the option of drawing assist. Now we can fill in the wings and make sure it's all nice and symmetrical. And basically up in these sort of rounded areas you can add some nice white spots on the wings. So press, and you'll have to go backwards and forwards a few times just to create some nice bumps in here and white dots. You may have to press slightly firm with this particular brush to get some bold colour. Some little dots like that look pretty good. And then anywhere where we've got these big lumps down here, you can start to flush them out with nice little white areas as well. So just add those little dots in here. A little bit down here too, a little bit here, and they don't all have to be the same sort of opacity. You don't have to make them super bright. You can add them in, and then there'll be a little bit sort of duller areas. And then once you've done that, you can go ahead and add in some extra colour maybe on the wings, so you can emphasise certain parts if there's lighting that you say want to come from the top. So I can add in some whiter area here. I can maybe do the same under here as well, like that, maybe a little bit here too, and then maybe you could go ahead and do some up here, and then be slightly brave and put a little bit right up in here, just a little line of sort, thicken it out a little bit if you want to, and then just pinch out, take a look at what you've got, and if you're happy you can pinch with 2 fingers and go full screen with 4, and you end up with today's finished design. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, drop a like down below, helps the channel out an awful lot. And if you're new here, I post Procreate content every single week, so if you'd like some tutorials to follow along with, hit that subscribe button down below and turn on the notification bell. And if you can't get enough Joel Create tutorials, there's a link in the description down below to my Patreon, where you can get access to even more tutorials every single month, as well as sneak peeks and extra benefits on my Discord server. And with all that said, I'll see you in the next one.